Hello and welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. Before I go on, one quick reminder about our Boomer Sooner contest. The deadline has been extended to July the 15th, and entries with Indian language version of the Boomer Sooner fight song should be sent to Post Office Box 2872, Norman, Oklahoma 73070. Now, tonight, my guest is Mr. Evans Ray Satepauhoodle, and he's a retired educator. He was very instrumental in the development of the Indian Education Act of 1972. He's a well-known Kiowa singer, and he's taught Kiowa languages at Kiowa language classes at Carnegie and more recently in Tulsa. So welcome, Evans Ray. To start us off, could you teach us just a brief greeting, the way that you might say hello to a friend if you saw them in Kiowa?
You can say it two ways. And I'm glad to see y'all, glad to be with y'all. So be all day to hope we continue to visit as such as we go down the road of life.
Thank you. We're very glad to have you here. Could you tell us your Kiowa name?
Yes. I was fortunate and I have my own grandfather's name. And his name is Doya Almoy. It means good medicine. And I was the first male grandson, so to speak, in our immediate family. So my mother had me named after him, and consequently, he didn't get to see me. He died just a year or two before I was born. So I went right into the name.
Sounds like you inherited a really good name from him, though.
Yes, thank you.
Some people in our audience may not be very familiar with the Kiowa tribe. Could you explain roughly where Kiowas live in Oklahoma?
Yes. I'll go a little further back. As you know, we used to live up in the Black Hills area. And a lot of our ancient history, so to speak, has been handed down from generation to generation, stems from there. That's where it all emanated back there in the Black Hills area, Wyoming, Montana, that area. A lot of our legends and our stories have come from there. But now we reside there in southwest Oklahoma, and primarily in the area of Kettle County, Kiowa County, and Little Comanche County. Briefly, it covers the areas of the principalities of Hobart, Anadarko, and Lawton, and the smaller towns and districts in there are comprised by Fort Cobb, and of course Carnegie, the Kiowa capital, and Mountain View, Godebo, Rainy Mountain area, and Apache, and Little Lawton, the Mountain Scott area, and roughly like a little triangle, and that's where we reside at this time. We number something close to about 5,000 or 6,000 now, and that's the figure we kind of use in a ballpark manner, so to speak.
I know you've been involved in trying to preserve your language for some time, and you've taught classes for some time and been developing some materials that we're going to be talking about later. How did you first get involved in all of this?
Okay, I first started with this when I developed an Indian curriculum. As a result, as you mentioned, I was very instrumental in regards to forming the Indian Education Act of 1972, Public Law 903 or something, what have you. And I designed a curriculum at that time that were used in high school social studies in conjunction with that as an elective, and it was approved by the State Department. So in there, I developed teaching units and topics, so to speak, and I developed one in languages. So at that time, that's what I covered. I started tampering with the Kiowa language, working out and on a phonics system of my own. And at that time, I was not aware of any other model, so to speak, and so I kind of created my own, so to speak. And then from there, I tampered with it for a while, and then of course I began to develop a need and pursue it as a challenge. And with all my education knowledge, the white man knowledge I had to put it in conjunction, worked it with my Indian knowledge, specifically the Kiowa language and the traditions and customs and knowledge that I have of the Kiowa, put it all together, and finally I developed this system that I use now, of my phonics system. But the thing that really set it off was a few years ago when my father was deceased, that we attended a Purity meeting, which is our Native American church, and my father was a member of that, and I reactivated my membership in that, so to speak, recently. And at that time, we were invited. And as we went through the rituals and proceedings, what have you, at that time a kind of a shocking experience I had. One of my own nephews was the priest. He was running the meeting, and when his time came to speak, so to speak, and to pray, so to speak, well, instead of using the Kiowa language, which I was conditioned to before, and I had a mindset for that, well, when he started speaking English instead of Kiowa, that's when it was really a throwback for me. I felt very hurt, very embarrassed, and in some ways I had a guilt feeling that somebody didn't do their work, so to speak. So at that time, I had that feeling, and I still have it to this day. And I will say this in all sincerity, that not necessarily that we are losing it, we have lost it. So we have to do something now, if it's not already too late, about preserving our language. And I think the same situation persists with other tribes in our state, that they are aware now, and I think a lot of things are being done now.
Yes.
So that's where the concern comes in, and the responsibilities of each one of us that are here now, especially those of us can talk it and understand it. Of course, we have the ones now that they're in the majority that can understand it, but for the two-way speakers, so to speak, we don't have too many of those people. And if you put them in a little group, so to speak, then we have, it's divided into about a third, a third, and a third. So we've broken up.
The whole tribe?
Yes.
About a third that are fully fluent?
Right.
And when you say a two-way speaker, you mean someone that can speak and understand
right.
completely fluently?
Exactly, right.
That would be about a third, maybe?
Right. So we are really in tough shape, really, overall.
And about a third that really don't understand at all, and about a third somewhere in the middle?
Exactly. Because, naturally, what we have found out in recent years, since the wars, we all become a mobile society, which involves all the Indians across Indian country and across the nation. And it's where we also start intermarrying racially and then tribally. So there's the problem right there.
Those are some factors
in itself,
in the
which is built in and was created not necessarily by ourselves, but it just emanated, just come by itself as a result of nature, I guess. And that's where we're at today, and that's how we fell behind, and we still are behind. So that's how far we have to go to catch up, so to speak, where we'll be.
I heard a phrase on the radio the other day. They were talking about financial difficulties of universities, and they said they have all these repairs and buildings they have to take care of. They said it's a serious case of delayed maintenance. And I heard that phrase, delayed maintenance. I thought, you know, that's the problem with a lot of Indian languages.
Exactly.
The up-to-date maintenance would be handing it down from each generation to the following generation, and that's, like you say, you have some catching up to do right now in so many tribes.
Very true.
You mentioned that when your nephew prayed in English rather than in Kiowa, you found that shocking.
Yes.
Now, I know that when you were a very young man, or a boy even, you just spoke only Kiowa for some time, didn't you?
Exactly.
What was that? I think you were telling me a while ago about, when we were talking before, about the first time you saw white people. Could you tell us about that? That was an interesting thing to hear about.
Yes. I guess a kind of a crude example in some ways, or, well, for the most part, it's just the way it happened to a lot of us. Really, we didn't know our Indian world, well, my world to be specific, was Kiowa world. It's the first one I become awakened to, so to speak, and all the traditions and customs. That's why I know about these things, practically all forms of our culture that we have. And I guess like a lot of them have painted me many times and talked about me in that way, in a good way, though, in a positive way, that I happened to grow up in that way, that my father was a traditional Indian, the strong traditional Indian, Native American church, and my mother was the one that grew up in the Protestant and the Christian, so to speak, in the white man way. Well, I had the best of both worlds, so to speak. Incidentally, my Kiowa was one of the first converted in Indian ministry. He became one of the first Methodist ministers in Southwest Oklahoma.
This was your
grandfather? He was a medicine man before, right? When he lost Uncle Ray at that time. As I mentioned, he was one of our first millionaires as a result of the oil boom on the Texas border there. And after that, he lost his only son there, and he converted to Christianity and became a full-fledged preacher at Cedar Creek Church, which I'm still a member of.
So your immediate family is within memory of people who lived in an entirely Kiowa world.
Exactly.
No English, and completely Kiowa culture and history and ways of living.
So I had my feet and hands in practically all forms of the culture.
I think you're very fortunate to have the best of both and to have lived in both worlds.
Exactly. I feel very fortunate now, especially now.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
Because
you
you're
betcha.
becoming
As I look
a very rare kind of person. these days.
Exactly, and that's what everything's in them books right there. You see.
Right. Let me get you to explain to us a little more, though, about why was it so shocking when your nephew prayed in English? I mean, some people might think, well, isn't a prayer a prayer? What difference does it make what language it's in? What is he so excited about?
Yes. Well, first of all, you know, the Almighty, Dog E, the Mayim Dog is the universal God, really. And Dog E, I guess, is kind of an abbreviated form or what have you. But in that, we have a word for it. And it's very strong, very heavy. And I'm going to go ahead and use it and try to use it in a good positive context. And incidentally, we don't have no four-letter words in our particular language, Kiowa. No profanity, no obscenity. But it simply says, Angeteint odamo, which simply means that whatever it is just doesn't belong. All right. So anything that's not God-given or anything related to the Almighty as such, then it was not meant to be that way and shouldn't be tempered with. Just like the elements are here and the disasters that we have, the earthquakes and things, get dog, I mean, they're made by God himself, not to be tempered by mankind at all, even the moon and things. So when they put that man on the moon here, when I was teaching junior high science, I explained it to my students. I said, I bet my people, some of my elders, a lot of them were there at that time. I said, I bet they really felt bad about it because mankind is tempering with that. It means bad luck. But getting back to language, that language is not applicable to what is going on in there because God gave our language, our songs, to the Kiowas, to the Cherokees, Penobscot, and what have you, as well to the Black Dutch and what have you over there. Everybody has their own thing that he approved and he gave to us to be used in that form and manner only. And that's what we adhere to since day one, and we still do to this day. Hopefully, and hope it continues. So in that regard, whatever it is in there, you place a question mark on it, whether it's going to work or not. And that was the thing that the other day when I visited with one of my other cousins, that concurred with this very fact that he was also shocked like that in a similar situation a few years ago. That he had the very same similar experience, and that he said he just felt very guilty, same way, that we better do something about it. Matter of fact, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's our present chairman of our tribe. And he concurred with this thing. Very same feeling that he had with his nephew also.
So a lot of people are in a similar situation as you, and they're really waking up to what's going on.
So that, in other words, that it takes away. Instead of adding to, it takes away. And it destroys. Matter of fact, it doesn't help in it. So in that regard, it loses the meaning and the feeling. Like you bring a violin or a guitar into that, to play that drum, which I'm a singer, just something to, exactly. So there you are. And so that's when you go into that meeting house or come around that drum with anything a little different or try to be innovative or innovative that doesn't belong, you're going to have to answer to him. Because that's where it comes from, not me or you or anybody else. Because he's the one who put it here back there when, and we don't question it. So why we didn't have lawyers and what have you back there to have to prove our point. Because those things were given by him.
But it's obviously something you believe very strongly. You feel a strong responsibility for your language. I can hear that.
Right.
Almost a sacred responsibility.
So that's why I felt shame. I just felt I was hurt. Very hurt. I still am to this day. That's why I'm trying to do something about it.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things you have done. We have basically two projects here we were going to talk about. One, I don't know if the camera can get a good shot of this. We can give it a try. Could you pronounce the title of your book for us, first of all?
It says, Goy San Tongi, Gut Komge. This is a Kiowa children's language book. And this one we put together with a couple of helpers that I have. They were and I happened to stumble on these people in my language class. I opened it both ends for people, anybody that's interested. I didn't cut it off. I was not discriminatory or anything.
I like that expression of yours, open at both ends.
Exactly.
The only one I've heard use that
because
term.
you never know
What do you, by that you mean that anyone's allowed to come into the class? They
so
don't have to be
Kiowa
Kiowa
notice
people.
in the paper, I said anybody's interested in Kiowa language may come and enroll, and it was done by our university, TU, that allowed me to do that. And that was the reason. So these people came in that was interested, happened to have expertise in these areas of education, to volunteer to help me put something like this together, and away we went. And that's what we've come out with.
I just got to see it for the first time today, and we should mention your collaborators' names, I think, by the way, don't you? Marlene Mankins and Pam Hodges
and
have
Pam
helped with this.
Right. They're good people. They're really.
It sounds like you have a good collaboration going.
You betcha.
I was just looking at this for the first time today. I've talked to both of them about it, but I didn't have a chance to see it yet. Let me read a little bit of the introduction, if I may. It says, Introduction, this book has been written for the coming generations. And now you have to pronounce this word for me. The coming generations. Guide Kiowa.
Yeah. Guide Kiowa for the coming generations.
That's the coming generations.
Guide Kiowa, right.
And for the betterment of those generations concerning the understanding and betterment of Indian people, particularly the Kiowas and their everlasting role as survivors. That's very strong language. And it goes on. Now, there are several sections in here. As I say, I'm just becoming familiar with this. I think it's a very beautiful book. There's a section organized by letters of the alphabet with words illustrating each letter.
You betcha.
And let's see, let me go back to the table of contents. There's a section on numbers, colors, and general areas of vocabulary and speech.
The basics.
Food, dishes.
Right.
And so you're concentrating a lot on the basic vocabulary, everyday words. And this was designed for preschoolers?
Yes, it can be. It's designed for almost anyone that's beginning, so to speak. It could be an elder, but it forms a base. And this also, the thing we added on with this one here was that the illustrations in there, as you can see.
They're very
nice. So that means you can use all your faculties here. More faculties you can use here. And we got tapes with these, so you can hook up too with the audio and be listening to these things as you go through.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. There is an accompanying tape or a set of tapes.
Exactly.
I think that's really wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of this project? How did you come up with the idea, and how long have you been working on it?
Right. Okay. When I've done my own research on this, like I mentioned when I designed that curriculum, and on language, I checked with my folks were still alive at that, because how far back, a few of my folks were still there. And I remember back to when my own mother, when she was still here, bless her heart, she said she could remember when there was 2 bona fide attempts made of doing something like this. I think it was around the late 20s, other one was around the late 30s.
Really?
And she said what happened the first time is that group got started, and then at that time, they still had this racial thing pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So that group and the tribe, they got a little anxious about and concerned about letting it get into the non-Indians' hands. So they put it on the shelf. The way they get another time frame, what have you, and then they try it again. At that time, it got too complex, too broad, too deep, and like too abstract, what have you. Then they decided to put it on the shelf again. And then were the only 2 bona fide attempts that she could remember. And one of my old grandpas, Parker McKenzie, he's still alive, bless his heart, I believe. He's the one had created a model that a lot of people had used or kept around for some time.
Yes, I heard of Parker McKenzie.
From that era, so to speak. All right, so and then up to here. So that was the only thing that she could remember that anybody made a bona fide attempt at any kind of a language preserving in this form and manner, writing it and like that.
And when did you and your 2 collaborators actually begin on this book?
Right.
About when did you start?
Okay, and let's see, it was but on this one here, well, the other one here that we used for our teaching guide here, it's the first one that we had used.
You did this one first?
Right, we used it in my classes at Carnegie and also at, and we hope to get started at the Oklahoma City area here too soon, maybe this fall.
I just noticed this has the date 1991, so these are both pretty recent works.
Right.
Let's talk about this one just a little bit. This is kind of more of a reference book, isn't it, for teachers that are teaching classes?
And it forms a base again. And the point I was trying to make, 2 points were one, that at that time, after Mother told me, after I knew what of the attempts and the problems that they encountered or whatever stopped them, then I decided, well, due to my own experience, professional experience in the classroom and what have you, then I decided, well, if I do design something like this, it must be simple. I got to make it simple, easy.
I think that's important, yeah.
Easy.
And basic.
Easy as I could, right. Break it down to the bone. Right. And then make it brief as I can. Make it short. Don't make it too broad and what have you, where it'll scare them off. So that's the things I had in mind even now that I want to use, and that way it'll form the base. And that's why I call it, the first time it came out was the basic for daily use, for daily guide.
Yeah, there are several subparts within this that came out, I guess, in succession.
So when that light bulb come on, well, that's when I thought, well, how should I approach it? How should I structure it, organize it? So I thought, well, with commands. I'll start with commands. In the typical Indian Kiowa household, mom and dad and the kids there, one or two.
I see here you have yes and no, come here, go, sit down, get up, lay down.
All kids. One of the first things my little grandkids learned is bedtime, or they didn't like it, go to bed. And it's time for bedtime. We duke it out. So
they learned that expression, meaning lay down.
Right. Anyhow, that's what happened there. So.
And then it goes on to other areas of vocabulary. Yes. Let me read just a little bit from your foreword on this first section, because I think it shows how strongly you feel about how urgent this is.
Yeah.
It says, this book is a sincere attempt by the writer in regards to preserving some of our sacred Kiowa language before it is gone. Forever! Exclamation point. And that's true. The writer feels very strongly at this time that a very serious crisis exists in our overall Indian culture. Therefore, it is imperative that this attempt to preserve our language be done now, capital letters. And if this information does more harm than good, the writer apologizes to all interested and involved parties. The intent and the content were originally perceived in a positive manner, and so on. And you finish by saying, so may the Great Spirit, Daki, bless the persons who may use this guide, especially the coming generation. So you're very, very conscious of how time is running out. And I really appreciate that you feel so strongly a responsibility in trying to preserve the language. And I think the things you're doing here are very good, and they're going to be very useful. Before I forget it, I promised to mention an address that people can write to get more information about these.
Right.
This this Kiowa language guide that is, I guess, more intended for teachers and as a resource or a reference is available now. And the children's book, children to all the way up to whatever age, this book is not quite in full production yet, still being finished up, but it will be available very soon. And you can get information about both of them by writing to Route 1, Box 209, Cleveland, Oklahoma 74020.
Right.
And since time is running out, I hope people will write to you and get the word around as best they can.
Gotcha.
I wonder if do you feel moved to sing a song for us? You were nice enough to bring your drum. We'd love it if you would.
Somebody mentioned I was a singer somewhere. I think I'll do my people justice. I know.
Good.
I know I know they're listening, and I know how they are. So let me sing a song. And this is a song that I made here recently for Miss Indian, Oklahoma. I think she's still reigning. She goes to school up here at OCU, and she has a Kiowa name, Theimha. That's her Kiowa name. And that's Sharon Bailey. So this is her song I composed for her. She put me on the spot once, and so to speak, in regards to when she won that title of Kiowa Princess first. And she said, Uncle, I know you know a lot of songs, and I want to know if maybe you could fix me a song. And we know the relationship between the uncles and the nieces and uncles and nephews is strong, very strong, and you don't ever say no in that regard. So I said, well, I know some songs, but I'm really not a composer, but with Dog E's help, and I said, I'll do my best. So this is what came out. It has some words in there, and I'll try to explain them. I say her name in there, and I say her Satepauhoodle name, like that, so that goes into this song. Satepauhoodle yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko ketaido hey oh hey oh. Satepa yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko gakomodo hey. Satepauhoodle yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko ketaido hey oh. Hey hey oh hey oh hey. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo, Satepa yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko gakomodo hey. Satepauhoodle yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko ketaido hey oh hey oh. Satepa yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko gakomodo hey. Satepauhoodle yoko gakomodo hey. Satepa yoko ketaido hey oh hey oh.
Thank you very much for
That's
singing
her
that.
name.
That's a good
Satepa
song.
yoko. It's her name. Everybody got up when she come into the room. And then it says Satepauhoodle yoko. She belongs also to the Satepauhoodle family. And then it says Satepa yoko ketaido. She's a leader. She's number one. So them are the words in there.
It sounds like an excellent song to really honor someone. I'll bet she was
did
pleased
music.
with it.
So she's missing in Oklahoma.
Thank you so much for singing that.
Thank you.
Well, it's been wonderful having you as a guest tonight, Evans Ray, and getting to know you. I've just only met you a few weeks ago, and it's been wonderful learning about your efforts. I think they're going to be very, very useful in preserving your language. Can you tell me, overall, do you feel hopeful? Do you think there's a future for the Kiowa language?
Definitely, and for all Indian languages, but it has to be done like yesterday.
Right, that's what everyone says.
And we all
yesterday.
have to do it together. We all have to do it together. We all help each other. Like these ladies here, they're not Kiowa, but they're helping me.
Yeah.
So that's the name of the game now, and that's why he put us here, to help each other.
I
And
think
that's
so
what
too.
it's all about.
And it is a real emergency situation now, isn't it?
You betcha.
Well, I think with your efforts and people that may benefit from your efforts and other people working with you, I think there's a lot of hope for the Kiowa language.
I
And
hope so.
very pleased to have met you and very honored to have had you as a guest.
So.
Thank you.
You too. Cool.
Thanks for joining us on Wordpath, and we'll see you next week.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita.